Welcome everyone to Mondays Live at 5. We got a winter scene again, and I picked several and I couldn't make my mind up, but seems like a lot of people like this one. So that's the one I'm going to do. I like to do these sessions in such a way as I try to present what my thinking is when I decide to do things this way or that way or whatever, in an attempt to maybe do what I did a couple weeks ago when I was outside. And what are the kind of decisions that you make when you're on location or you're doing a subject for the first time? So rather than, practice this and then do it, get it right and then do it in front of you, I don't see there's any utility in that. So I have not done this, but I'm gonna try a few things. So here are just to review, here are some of the different images that I offered. This place is on the Skunk River, seen from a bridge, and this ice is caused by this dam, and seen here in a different sort of weather. That's why there's a kind of a break there. I think I'm going to do this next. Maybe I want to try this. I've always wanted to try this kind of subject, and this will be done. And then we also have some, and I want to maybe incorporate into this, that lighting, that time of day. And then we have some interesting things that my friend Renee sent. This is in Ottawa, the Cummings Bridge back here. I think this could be a very interesting subject. This particularly, how would I do that? So maybe the next 2-3 weeks we're going to be doing this sort of thing. Hello, Michael. So this image, I was looking at this and I was saying, okay, how am I going to compose this? Essentially, we've got a series of wedges that sort of bite into each other. We got a wedge going this way. We got a wedge behind it going that way. I think probably it might be nice to take advantage of some of that and create a interesting edge in the foreground, maybe even crop it something like that. And the other thing is we haven't done a situation where I'm soaking the paper and turning it over and then taping it down. I think this might be a good candidate for that, because there are a lot of spiky, sharp shapes in this. And we need some softness to kind of balance that out. And I think there's a glow, which was the thing that captured me about it, was the glow of the light. We're looking basically southeast, I believe, at the Skunk River near Mount Pleasant, Iowa. So I'm going to wet the paper on its back, just using water with a hockey brush. And then I'm going to stick this to the board. Oh, good, Michael. Well, maybe not that high. Let's see, about that high. Now I have to do the front. The idea here is to saturate the paper such that there is water in the surface of it, so that when we apply washes or some... Hello, Renee. Bonjour. We're going to we're going to go to Ottawa, perhaps next week, because I really liked your images. Very challenging looking. Okay, so I'm hopefully getting this to the saturation point. I want water all the way through the paper to the back. And then I'm going to roll some paper towels, or what the British call kitchen roll. Over top of that to get the excess moisture off. Here we come. So it's the situation I'm creating here is water underneath the surface, but not so much on the top. So now I'm going to, I should have drawn. Doggone it. How about that? When you're doing this, it's probably a good idea, if you're going to draw, to do it first, because graphite on wet paper. Hello, Judy. Oh, good. Happy hour. Yes. Well, I have a little bit of a nice rosé, which I'm going to save for the end. And it's really kind of fascinating that you can tape wet paper and it works. Of course, I guess I've taken a lot of the moisture off the surface. So I'm going to have to guesstimate, and I'm going to use a wash brush, a number 12, 14-ish brush. The colors we're going to use are the usual suspects: yellow ochre, transparent red iron oxide, ultramarine, cobalt, cerulean, cobalt turquoise, lavender, naphthol red, and quinacridone rose. So I know I want a bit of a glow in this half to a third. I need to leave some white areas in this wedge. So I'm going to start with the lighter colors, which would be the yellow ochre. And you notice that's kind of slow moving. I'm using a slow moving paint rather than a runny paint for the initial washes, because I might have to even add some. We'll see. And I'm using colors that will lift. Up at the top, I'm going to go with cerulean. Maybe slow-ish moving. Hello, Charles. And we're going to let these things merge. It's going to be a holy mess for quite a while. And I can't actually say that this whole thing won't become crash and burn. You never know. Now I'm going to put a little bit of the reds into this blue, or just get some ultramarine blue, a purplier blue, and I'm going to go underneath. There are going to be other colors that happen on top of that. You put the lighter colors in first, and I'm thinking of that color there. I almost want a kind of a purplish color for that, because it's snow in shadow. Even though it looks white, it's in shadow. And because that water is darker, I'm going to paint right over that area. Now, like I warned you, this is going to be a mess. It's going to look like a tie-dyed t-shirt at first. I have to leave this white wedge. And I'll be honest, I don't know if the whole thing will go south. Now down here, I'm going to get into a more greenish blue. So that the sky area and that area are different characters of blue. I don't want... In here, I need something sort of umber. So I've got like some ultramarine here. Let's put in a little bit of transparent red iron oxide to get a neutral color up in here. Because there's water on the surface, this is going to be very blendy. Is that a word? It is now. I'm going to make it browner here. I'm going to put some red iron oxide in there. So when I paint like this, I haven't drawn, and when you're using paints in this fashion with a wet piece of paper, you're probably not going to get, even if you drew it first, you're probably not going to get, it's going to move around. So, even if you drew it to be in a particular spot, it may not wind up there anyway. So you might as well, it's golf, like play it where it lies. That effect. Now I'm going to put a little bit of blue into this to get something grayer. Now that little run there, I'm going to try and capitalize on that. Let that be a reflection. We've got what this is there's a road curving around here, and there's what used to be a boat slip to get into the river there. So if you've already painted in an area, let's get some redder or browner, if you've already painted there's water, or the surface is moist. So the paint you bring to it needs to be just a bit thicker. And I might even get into some orange. Maybe not that much orange. But it will spread if there's water on the surface. It will migrate. And yeah, we're definitely in the holy mess stage. But it's 2026. Let's put some of that orange and orange and blue. Oh my good. Oh, I've got sienna, ultramarine, more sienna than I keep calling it sienna, but it's actually transparent red iron oxide. Shouldn't say that. I'm going to put a little bit of that back there because the sun is kissing the tops of those trees. And I need a little more cobalt or ultramarine in this area. So I'm mixing slower moving, thicker paint. See how that doesn't run? If I put that into a wet surface, the edges will soften, but they won't actually move around too much. I hope. Okay, now that's very dark and indigo-ish. So I'm going to get some neutral tint and some cobalt and pop that in there. Very slow moving, not moving, in other words. And I'm going to try to get, while this is still wet, a bit of that dark area back there. As we, typical light to dark, soft edges to hard edges. Big shapes to small shapes. Oh, I hear Shorty coming. Shorty's my old cat. Let's pack a little bit of, this area is closer to us than that area, so let's put a little bit extra brown in there. So if you hear a wheezing sound, that's Shorty. Because this is wet up there, I'm hoping I'll get a soft edge. Hey, Jimmy. Thank you, man. I'm hoping I'll get a soft edge that'll look like all those, all that tree action. Here comes Shorty. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm probably going to want to go to a smaller brush, the Oriental. Let me show you that. Hi, Lisa. That is a little firmer and holds a little less paint. And I'm going to get the ultramarine. This is a kind of a weird blackish, bluish, indigo color. Get more of it. I'm very thick there. I'm tilting it. It doesn't run. So and then I will eventually get to the spot where I'll want to dry it and move into kind of wet on dry marks. So now I need to shape this clump of trees a little better. It's kind of dry up here because we haven't painted there in a while. So the browner mix, the bluer mix. Getting on the tip of this thing. Very light touch. Trying to be a very light touch. And on the side of the brush so that good question, Renee. Yeah, why am I thick? Because I'm constantly painting on this piece of paper. It's moist from underneath, and when I paint on top, I'm putting moisture on top. So if I bring a runny mix of paint to this surface, it's going to just kind of disappear all into, make a big blur. So I have to bring thicker paint so when it goes on that damp surface, what will happen is that it will one, the edge will soften because there's water there, but two, it'll more or less stay in place. Now, possibly you haven't heard me use my little hot cocoa analogy. And what I say is, if you imagine a cup of hot cocoa, it's liquid. And if you pour milk into it, which is liquid, the liquid disperses and the cocoa gets lighter. Now, if you take that same hot cup of hot cocoa and you squirt whipped cream on it, or you put a dollop of whipped cream on it, the whipped cream, which is stiffer and thicker, will pretty much stay where you put it, but it will also soften around the edge. And that's the effect that I'm desperately hoping to get here. We'll see if I get it. But hopefully that helps. So when I need a dark, I use ultramarine and transparent red iron oxide. So, and I always try to be mindful of the fact that if I've just painted some place, I try to keep in mind that that area is wet. So when I go to it again, or if I go to it again, I'm going to have to bring thicker paint. So unlike the oil painter or the acrylic painter, who doesn't have to be aware of the condition of the surface that they're painting on, other than they've applied thick paint to it or something already, they get to just slap something down and it'll stay. Now, here we go. There should be something of a reflection. So I'm putting some yellow ochre and some sienna here to try and show that the open water there is reflecting what's above it. But I'm going to go back to a purer blue, just a more cerulean, with some of that in it. The whole, maybe it's worth repeating the phrase that I try to tell people when you're painting watercolor is that the whole trick to getting the stuff to work is knowing what happens when you bring a particular consistency of paint to a particular condition of the paper. And for all intents and purposes, there are really only two consistencies of paint. And that's runny paint, which is, more water than pigment, and slow-moving paint, which is more pigment than water. And the conditions of the paper are the obvious dry condition. And then when you put paint on it, you've got water on the surface. And then the water is immediately starting to saturate in. And then the third condition of the paper is when the water has soaked into the paper. It's not really on the surface, but it's still underneath and the pigment isn't dry. And you'll always know what that situation is because when the glisten goes off the paper, if you look at the painting from the side, you won't see a glisten on the surface. I see a glisten here, but not up here. Then you'll know that the water is below the surface, but the pigment isn't dry. So I have to know what's going to happen when I bring a particular consistency of paint, either a thick paint or a thin paint, to that. What's going to happen? So I'm mindful of those things. Whereas if I was painting in oil, I wouldn't have to be. I can just stick something on the surface and it's going to stay pretty much where I put it unless I start moving it around. So hopefully that helps. So up here I haven't painted right in there for a while, so I can put something, and you can see when I make a mark, it pretty much stays put. And I'm trying to build up a strong dark there, because I want to scratch out that white tree. Now there I just painted, and the glisten has not gone off of that. But I maybe want some of these soft, okay, so there's water on the surface here, and there's snow on this ramp where they move the boat down to. Let's paint that in. And since there's snow on that, it's going to reflect white in the water. So I'm going to take the brush, squeeze the water out, and I'm going to mop a bit of the water off the surface there so it reflects that white. And I could also maybe rinse, squeeze, and do the same over here. Let's see. Just to get a look. I think what I want to do now is just start to adjust some of these shapes with the slower moving paint. And I'm on the side of the brush. The paper is more or less dry. And now let's do a runny mix of that. I want to make it not quite so bright yellow ochre right in this area. And I want to take these trees all the way off the top. So I'm going to have a lot of work cut out for me trying to make these trees look like trees. Oh boy. A little redder in here. And there. There's a road in there. There's some dark stuff here. This is rock, which they've put down there to, when it floods, that it doesn't create too many problems. Looks like I need some brownishness. Not that color. Maybe something more orangey. Some of that orange up here. Let's see. I thought it was cat orange, but it turns out it's probably azo orange. Not a good lifter like cad. Some of that in there. And I'm getting to the point. I need some turquoise. Well, maybe not turquoise. Maybe some cobalt with a little bit of quinacridone rose to make a... Ooh, shoot, lavender is the color I want. Just use it. Back there. Okay, I want that. Yeah, my background is now going back a little further. And I think right now I'm going to dry... I'm going to take a damp brush and I'm going to kind of confuse this area. Ooh, I might be sorry I did that, but we'll see. Okay. I'm going to dry this, and I'll mute the mic so you don't have to listen. All right, that should be dry enough. Now I'm going to get a brush, or a series of smallish brushes now. This is a small oriental brush. I might use this one for, it's like a script brush for doing some things that are branches. But I'm also going to need a medium-sized brush that doesn't hold a lot of paint, but more than these. So, well, you know what? Take it back. I do need to do a bit of glazing. I think I need a bit of warmth across the tops of those trees. Very, very runny wash of the orange. And I need to get some of that in there too. And in here too. And I need a neutral kind of gray, which I'm going to get. Hey, Daryl, how are you, man? Oh my gosh, I hope it's not crazy there on the East Coast. Sounds like you might be getting some less than desirable weather up there. I'm going to need something that's kind of like yellow ochre in here because the white needs to stand out from the road. So I'm just going to glaze that. This area needs to be bluer. So I'm going to get, maybe some cobalt. So a glaze is a runny mix of paint applied to a drier surface, which already has some paint on it. And I'm going to need some darker blues in there. Now that area is wet. This area is dry. So I can get the brush I was just talking about, that one, and get some thicker blue paint using ultramarine, good old ultramarine. And get some of these linear elements. And I'm just looking for dark shapes, light shapes. The key thing that I'm looking for is where is it? How big is it? And then what shape is it? Very dark spots back there. But I don't want them to be too black. So I'm going to use a blue, a slow-moving mix of blue and a little bit of red iron oxide. There's a kind of a big triangular shape coming down there. Using the side of the brush to get a broken stroke. Have to mix more of that. It's too brown. It's too much of the brown component, more of the blue component. Okay. All kinds of trees in there which have fallen down, still standing. Every time the river floods, and it does, particularly in spring, trees come downstream and pile up along here, and it's never looks the same twice. It's really kind of cool. Now that is really thick and unmoving paint. I might actually have to put a little water in it. I'm using very light pressure on the brush. Kind of just, you notice I'm at the end of the brush. That makes a difference. Rather than, if you were choked up like that, like a pencil. I'm trying to desperately not to get the spacing of those tree trunks to be even, like they were planted in an orchard or something. That could be a problem. It'll look a little bit more natural if they're irregularly spaced. Again, I'm always looking for where's that dark color. First, where is it? How big is it? What shape is it? I'm making this a little bit more diagonal so that, in the hopes that it doesn't become like a band across there. Sometimes you run into that so often. Okay, now these trees, which are the closest to us, oops, too much. I'm going to give them a bit more definition. This, I got that yellow ochre a little bit too. So I'm going to have to do something with that. Going to blot that brush so that there's not as much paint on it. And I'm mindful that there's some trees which are behind and some trees which are further forward. And I will put those bases below where I put the bases of the other ones. Too dark. Hopefully I can fix that. We'll see. Like I say, this could go totally south. You never know till you get done with the darn thing. Now let's say underneath that dark spot, I want a reflection of the dark spot. I put a bit of paint there, and now I'm bringing a damp brush near it to create something of a, hopefully, a reflection. This area is troublesome. This stuff with a lot of water to make a kind of a neutrally raw umber kind of, I want to feature that one, but not so much this one. So I'm glazing it. The area is dry and I'm putting a runny mix on the dry paint. Okay, let's see. Put a little bit of that down here too, because it's going to have to be a reflection. Now that looks like a blob of paint, right? So I'm going to put water to the side of it so that it bleeds out a little bit. If there's water on the surface, the paint can swim into that wet surface. with that. Let's get some of that brownish mix. Put that up there. Oops, maybe too much. Get a tissue. Now I need to make some decisions about tree trunks. But first, where would cast shadows be? Light's coming in from the right. Let's get some of that lavender color for our shadows. I'm going to say there's a cast shadow coming off of those trees, and certainly there should be some coming off of these trees. Maybe some more striations or where the ice builds up there. Here. As the brush exhausts, I'm going to use these very small amounts to dry brush in some light areas to suggest the twigs at the ends of certain branches. And I am doing it as if it were more like that. So I'm taking this all the way up, and then I'm going to put the larger branches. And I'm going to do it with this little skinny brush. But first I got to get my big areas right. I need some more orangish. Oops, not that. Rinse the brush. In here. Just a smidge. Where is it? How big is it? Now. Okay. So let's get into the smallest marks. I need some brownish, dull brown, so but not dark, so it's going to be slow-ish moving. There's some things here. I'm going to blot that. After loading the brush, I blot it. I've got a towel here, and then I pull up. I'm laying the brush on the side of the paper and pulling up and out. Up and out. That might even be too much paint. Okay. Put a little of that there. Now let's get the little skinny brush to do the branches. And I'm going to want to do more of it in the foreground than in the background. So, and I'm trying to paint uphill just the way the tree grows. If you try and paint from the top down, then you're going to have thick branches at the top and skinny ones at the bottom, which is not what a tree looks like. So try to do it like be mindful of where the base of the tree is. or the shrub. Try not to space them equally. I really struggle with that. It's just, there's something human nature that we just want to do things in even intervals. I wished I hadn't got that quite as yellow, but we can say it's a willow. It's doing that. Should be some darker areas and some lighter areas. Don't make them all the same width, same spacing, same value. Make some lighter if they're further away. Make them a different color, make them bluer. So I've got a lot of cerulean there, and even those branch trunks are not cerulean blue. They'll seem further away if I make them cerulean blue, I hope. Maybe that's the solution here. Just get some of that on there and tone it down a bit. You can use the side of these crazy brushes to make this is the group of trees that are closer to me. Need something darker. Might be getting carried away here. Might be getting, yeah, I better. Okay. Now, what about that? Let's dry this. I'll mute again. Okay, now there's a sycamore or something like that back there, which is kind of a counterbalance to my eye to those two there. And what I'm going to do, you could do this with your fingernail or a palette knife. I'm going to spritz this area. So there's some water on the surface, and because there's a lot of pigment, it's very dark. Too early. What I want to do is wait just when the glisten goes off. And I'm lifting the pigment up. Scraping it away, because if I do it too early, the water will run back to where I've scraped. If I do it too late, I will not have enough. And I might just soften it with my finger towards the top. That's just enough to do some, maybe even make a, well, it's too late for that. Same thing could be done in here. And again, the denser the pigment, the more, when it dries, the more it will sit on the top. So just waiting on that. Waiting for the glisten to go off. Too early. The pigment could swim back in. I always think this looks a little better than if you do the, what you call it, like painted on with gouache or something like that. Try now. Still too early. Now this area, it didn't get spritzed, it's dry. So I could take clear water, and if I wanted to lift a kind of an illuminated area here, I can moisten that and lift some of that pigment away. I think that helps a bit. So it wasn't the total disaster that it could have been. But like I say, I want to do a thing where I see if we're at the right stage. Almost. Well, thank you, Jackie. Yeah, I'm still waiting on this darn thing. But what I could do right there, it might be. No, my goodness, this is. Wonder why it's so wet there. There, we're starting to get it. There's some Winslow Homers where it looks like he actually went in after the fact when it was dry and scratched out stuff with a jackknife. But you really have to be sure you're using a good 100% cotton paper for that. There we go. That's what I wanted. You have to let it get to that state. It's knowing the condition of the paper. And that, of course, I didn't wet that. So what if, let's experiment. Here we go. I'm going to just put a little bit of water there with the brush. Ooh, just learned something. Okay. Maybe don't spritz it. Yep, don't spritz it. Just apply a little bit and then do it. And the reason that works is because those darker applications of paint, thank you, Judy. Those darker applications of paint, it's more pigment sitting on the surface of the paper, so you can get it off. Right here, there is you could also just do a lift like that with the brush. And when you do it with that, you want to be very careful and press, don't rub, and then lift. There we go. Yeah, okay. Here too. And I try to do light over a medium or dark area and or dark over a light to medium area. So for example, see right here, it's light and then it gets dark. So maybe let's do a similar, get a dark brownish neutral. This one's coming up light, but when I go into these areas, I'm going to turn it dark. Look like a continuation of the same thing. Okay, this is probably where I better peel it and see what I'm getting. Actually, I'm kind of happy I tried the soaked paper approach for starters, because I haven't done that for a while, and I think it maybe works. I'm a little stronger in color than what the image is, but maybe raw sienna in this area would have been the better choice than the yellow ochre. Ooh. Okay. So, yeah. And the best thing to do, is to get away from the reference so you can see if the thing, let the thing live on its own. So here I can see things that I would like to do. I would like to have a little more coming out of there. I did want this to be go all the way to the top of the image so that stayed further away. Yeah, let's bring this one out into the sky there. And what else can I do? I'm looking at it. So there, but I don't want to get too crazy. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. But the idea was try and create a focal point with little bits of warm color, the ochres and the siennas, in a sea of blues. Oh, thanks, Karen. Yeah, it is kind of, it's last few days have been kind of chilly. But it's supposed to warm up again. We'll see. Oh, look at that. Let's see. No. I'm at the stage where I want to stop and look at it. And if something still continues to bug me, then I'll make the change. He says as he does something, and he probably shouldn't. Right here, I want a little more of that dry brush, end of twigs kind of stuff. Oh, thank you, Renee. Yeah, either next week, I think next week maybe I want to do this one, or I want to try one of these Ottawa images. Either this one, well, dog, I love this. But this is interesting too. We can see the coming bridge. This, I'm trying to figure out how would I organize that? Because there's that. What am I going to feature? What am I not going to feature? Very interesting. And then the totally frozen river. That's kind of neat. But this is beautiful. I really like that. The way that sun is here and we get these shadows coming off those trees. So anyway, there it is, Skunk River in southeast Iowa. Everybody stay safe, stay sane, and bye-bye.